Well, hey there, Diet Disruptors. Carrie here, and do I have a guest for you? Sue Hitzman is what we call the what do we call you, like the fashionista, but not like
I like that.
right?
I am a fashionista.
Fashionista, but not in the way that most people think. Sue Hitzman is a renowned health and wellness expert who has figured out a part of our body that is one of the most essential for us to know, but there's so little knowledge out there. And so this is part of our series on supplements or supplementation, or as I like to say, supplemental strategies, therapies, skills, knowledge that we need to have an understanding of in order to truly reach our optimal health. It's not just what you put in your mouth and how you like strength train. There's so many other aspects to our health. And Sue is going to school us on something that we all have to understand about our bodies. So, Sue, thank you for being here. I am so excited to be able to pick your brain. I think you might be the smartest person I've ever met.
It's not true.
It's true. Every time I talk
There's
to
so many
you,
people so much smarter than me. I feel
oh,
like I just,
well,
ride the coattails of giants. So
I just get smarter every time I talk to you. And I love that now you have a podcast called The Anatomical Gangster.
yes.
And so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about, though, your like the legacy that you are leaving as we talk. Almost every single one of my clients knows who you are. And as they listen to this podcast, they're going to be so, so, so excited because they're obsessed with you and everything that you teach. So you started something called the MELT method. And I think you need to just really start at the beginning and help us understand what you do, why you do it, and how you help people.
Oh my gosh. Well, I don't even know where to start on that topic, but Melt spawned out of my private practice in the late 90s. I had gotten myself into chronic pain. I always share the story that I was at the peak of my fitness career. I started out in fitness when I was 16. I bought into the idea that if you ate right and you exercised, you were going to lead this healthy, active life. And I had the body everybody said they wanted. I ate a clean diet. I did everything that I think anybody who believes in fitness would do. And one day I woke up, the bottom of my foot hurt me. I thought I stepped on a piece of glass. And what started out as foot pain turned into this body-wide ache and fatigue that I couldn't shake. And it went from a diagnosis of plantar fasciitis all the way on out to lupus. So I was like, oh my God, I've got an autoimmune disease, right? So I was exhausted, frustrated, scared because of what was happening. And like a lot of people, I went down that medical route to try to discover the reason.
Mhm.
And what I discovered was that the medical industry is not causal knowledgeable.
Mhm.
They treat symptoms. And so either I was told to take a pain reliever to manage my pain, I was told to take an antidepressant, or they sent me out for more specialists to look at my results. And so it really kind of spun me out of the fitness industry and into the healing arts of hands-on therapy. And the big thing that really shifted my perspective of wellness was this initial diagnosis of plantar fasciitis. And I just kept thinking inflamed fascia, plantar fasciitis. What the hell is inflamed fascia? And there's no exercise for that. How the heck do you fix inflamed fascia? So lucky enough in the late 90s, Google became a thing. I typed in fascia in the search bar and I discovered this emerging field of neuroscientists and fascial researchers and clinicians who are trying to uncover not only fascia's relationship to pain, but fascia's relationship to cell proliferation, longevity, resilience, and just actually how things connect.
Oh my gosh. So
Yeah.
we need to talk about what fascia is, but you said a couple of things that really made me think about the fact that we are so obsessed in this country, in this world with the weight loss journey.
Sure.
And yet I hear your story about this person who looked like she was at this optimal weight, and yet we keep ignoring the actual conversation of health. When
That's right.
you are at your optimal health, the weight becomes the byproduct. And you also said the piece around the symptom, that doctors keep treating the symptom. And that's what we do in weight loss, right? We treat the symptom, not the actual issue that's going on. And itis means inflammation. And
Yes.
so it makes so much sense that we have to actually treat the root cause. So this, I love that you took that word and kind of pulled it apart to understand what it is. I don't think people really do that. I hear plantar fasciitis all the time, and I don't think people really understand what that is. So, what is fascia, and why is it so important?
Yeah, well, that's really the conundrum is what exactly is fascia? Scientifically or traditionally, fascia is called connective tissue. It's the matrix under your skin that connects everything structurally at a macro level. It's what keeps your body upright. It gives your joint shock absorption. It gives your muscles synergy and connection. But on a microscopic level, fascia is the matrix of the extracellular matrix, the stuff outside of every cell that assists in communication, cell proliferation, transportation of nutrients, elimination of waste. And so I think of fascia as a stability system. We've now defined it as an organ, a sensory organ, because it has more sensory nerves in it than our muscles or anywhere else in our body.
Wow.
But I would really say that as a classification of tissue organ system, I would consider fascia a system of connection, communication, stability, and in its own matrix and its substance, it is I always call it a neuroelectrochemical superconducting highway. It's a transportation system so that our body can function efficiently. And what everybody needs to understand is that daily living causes a breakdown in this matrix, challenging it to do one of its primary jobs, which is to manage tension and compression. It's a tension compression management system. And so when it becomes dysfunctional, it is above many of the symptoms that we deal with. So I'll give you a really easy one. Like I always say, fascia, it's a fluid matrix. And so ideally, fluid perfusion is occurring daily. But our daily lives, our repetitive postures, habits, and movements causes cellular breakdown. It actually creates a lack of fluid perfusion in the system, which decreases the ability for the fibers to move, glide against one another, and create communication. So even if people are listening and they don't have pain, I'll guarantee they felt cellular dehydration. And I always explain this, like if you sit for long periods of time and when you get up, you feel like you aged 40 years because your joints don't
Yes.
work as well when you get up as they
Yes.
do when you sit down, right? Or as you're getting older, you're noticing one or more joints are bothering you. You're kind of your joints click, or you go to move and you're like, "Ow, man, that really hurts me." This is actually the key factor here is a breakdown in fascia, and fascia possesses a relationship to every other system, tissue, organ in your body. So it has a relationship to your emotional, physiological, neurological, hormonal, chemical, psychological stability.
Wow.
So in every level, fascia plays a role in all systems, balance, homeostasis, and regulation and function. That's what it is.
And so, how does I hear this all the time, and I want you just to be able to really clarify. We talk about collagen a lot. People think
Yeah,
about, collagen, they're buying collagen,
sure.
and yet we don't talk about connective tissue fascia in the same way. Tell us the difference. What is collagen
Yeah,
compared to connective
collagen's the
tissue fascia?
yeah, collagen is the most abundant material in the body. In fact, there's over 20 different types of collagen in our bodies. And the fibroblasts, the cells of our fascia, are actually producing all of the stuff that keeps us stable. And so fascia is a collagen matrix. In
Mhm.
fact, the ability for collagen is a very tensile strength tissue that resists the uptake of tension so that when we move, our joints don't fall out of place or we don't feel like we have rigor mortis in our body. But on top of that, on top of collagen, we also have elastin and these interstitial fluids called ground substance that mix together to create this gel-like substance in our body that, again, provides cushioning, support, communication, neuroelectrochemical transference, vibration, frequency, and basically plays a role, again, in all levels of stability. So collagen is absolutely important. We know how important collagen is, right? Like as we get older, we start to see
Mhm.
wrinkles, cellulite, things like this. Those are caused by metabolic changes, a breakdown in the fascial fibers, the lack of glidability, the lack of elastic resilience. And that's why so many people like myself take collagen every day,
Mhm.
because you can ingest collagen. And if you then actively move, you don't just take collagen and sit around all day, but if you take collagen and then you go out for a walk or exercise, your cells are going to absorb that and transport it through the body. And it actually does help decrease some of the negative effects we associate with aging.
Today's episode is brought to you by Resist Protein Bars. Now, I'll be the first to tell you, yes, of course, you want to be eating clean, whole, unprocessed food as much as possible, but also we're busy, right? And so we have to still be able to fuel our body in a way that it loves. And protein bars are often a really good source of fueling. However, the problem is there's so many ones on the market that either spike your blood sugar uncontrollably or they're filled with all sorts of nasty ingredients. And to be honest with you, most of them are both. That's why I love Drew and Emily, two women who decided they were going to crack the code on how you can produce a protein bar that not only tastes great, but also has wonderful ingredients and won't spike your blood sugar. Think about the name resist, like insulin resistance. Blood sugar balance is what they are all about. I love that they are a company of women that also are a company that cares about what we put in our body. So if you are interested to try as a great meal replacement to one of your PFC meals, check out eatresist.com and use the code PFC315 to get 15% off. Some of the things that I really learned from you is around some of the things that you said. I love the concept of the superhighway, right, of your body. And you said to me once, and this sticks with me a lot, that our skeletal our bones don't actually paint the picture of your overall body. But if
Absolutely.
you actually took your fascia, all of that connective tissue, it actually it would show what our body this actually looks like and kind of functions as. Is that right? Can you
Exactly.
explain that a little bit more too? Because
Sure.
that's so fascinating when you said that to me.
Yeah, so it is called a cytoskeleton. So if I removed everything from your body except a skeleton, right? If I just had a skeleton in front of you,
Yep.
you really wouldn't, if I said, it was that a man or a woman, right? Were they
Yeah.
heavy? Were they skinny?
Right.
What did they do in their lifetime? You wouldn't really be able to tell because you just have the bones. And
Bones. Yeah.
bones are really just they're not only spacers, they also possess quite a frequency and connection into this extracellular system. But fascia, if you removed everything else, all the organs, all the nerves, all the blood vessels, all the bones, and you just left fascia, you would see the entire system. And within the body, you would see every compartment of everything. You would see the compartment around every nerve, every blood vessel, every cell, every organ, every substance in the body. You would actually see the external aspect of it, but fascia is infusing through things. So it's really like a three-dimensional imaging system of the body. And it really is the only substance in the entire body that is completely continuous from head to toe, skin to bones, and it connects and interpenetrates everything in our system. And what's really crazy is it is the most abundant substance in the body, and it's the least studied, and only because of these pioneering researchers, Tom Findlay and the entire fascial research community has really taken a deep dive over the past 30 years to really uncover what Ida Rolf was talking about so many years ago about the importance of fascia, or Andrew Taylor Stills, and even Vesalius in the 1500s was looking at this as a system that was connecting, but in anatomy, we just chuck it in the bucket to get to the good stuff. But in fact, it is the good stuff. There's so much rich information, and we're just at the beginning of really understanding the biological makeup of fascia and its relationship to hormone regulation, immune regulation, and longevity.
So while we're just at the beginning of this, it floors me that 30 years ago, let's be honest, in the 90s, when you started Googling this, there was information that you kind of latched onto and continued to study. Why is it that we aren't hearing about this at all in our medical community when, we work with clients in their 40s, 50s, 60s. So many of them have joint pain, chronic pain, all sorts of different things going on. And it's me that tells them about you, not their doctors telling them about this being an important piece of the puzzle.
Okay, well, there's two things. One is that in the literature in school, when you go to college, you take a master's, and even when you're in your medical degree courses,
Mhm.
you they don't study fascia. Again, we chuck it in the bucket. The
Literally.
Literally, we chuck it in the bucket to look at the good stuff. I mean, the first time I ever did a dissection, we got to the bodies after the medical students. And so it was already a cut up, hacked up body. And you were looking at the muscles and going, oh, yeah, the muscle does go from here to here. But no, that's not true. The fascia continues on to
Yeah.
create these meridians that actually, when you look at Chinese acupuncture and acupressure, these are the fascial continuums that they were linking to. And that's why you can put a needle in your shin and release your neck, right? So these are
That is
fascinating.
so, and it's in between your skin and your muscles, right? In terms of location. Is that right?
Fascia?
Yeah.
It's actually infused from the dermis of your skin all the way down into the cellular matrix of your bones. There's no separation in it.
All the
It's
way through.
Yeah, if you just
Hmm.
look at the area between your muscles and your skin, that would be
Yeah.
called superficial fascia, and then
Okay.
a deep serous layer of fascia, and then you have deep fascia, which is in the muscle or myofascia. You have visceral fascia, you have neural fascia, right? So we define words, but they're all the same molecular structures.
Got it.
But to answer your
Yeah.
question of why doesn't medicine look at fascia more? The only people that are really looking at connective tissue more than anybody is the cosmetic industry.
Hmm.
But the thing is, there's no pill
Hmm.
or surgery that's going to fix your fascia. And in fact, if you do something like liposuction, fascia possesses an intuition. There's a vibration, a frequency that occurs through fascia that I would consider it, dare I say, your chi system. In Chinese
Yeah.
literature, they call it Jin Yi, right? So the fluid essence and fluid motion.
Yeah.
That kind of sounds like fascia to me.
Yeah.
But so there's not going to be a pill that's going to improve the fascial matrix. We can ingest collagen, and some of that will be transported. But there's not a ton of scientific evidence or research just yet. And when people say, well, if it's so important, why isn't research being put towards it? And I say, actually, it is.
Mm.
But if anybody understands research,
Hmm.
research takes a lot of money, a
Hmm.
lot of time,
Hmm.
and and a lot of exclusions. So to do a research study, you have to live in a box.
Mm.
And it's kind of, you can't, like, even when we did our first low back pain research study, we did it with the New Jersey Institute of Technology. And the exclusion was that for back pain, you couldn't have had any kind of spinal surgeries, no cortisone injection. You couldn't have a high BMI or too much fat, because it was hard for the ultrasound to actually read through body fat. So you're basically taking all of the people who could really benefit from the
Hmm.
therapy and really make marked results. You have to exclude them because of these things. And
Right.
and so it is a very challenging thing to do. It's people like, well, where's the double blind placebo, blah, blah, blah. And
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
they're not going to have too much of that in the fascial community, because it is a ubiquitous material. It is not the easiest to measure. We're only just now understanding new ways to measure besides ultrasound. We have an indentometer and other tools that people like Robert Schleip have really pushed forward. And I think that where technology is going, we're really right at a level where technology and the curious minds of these phenomenal researchers who, again, have really for 30 years put forth valid concepts and science to bring awareness to
Hmm.
fascia. First, you need to build awareness.
Yeah.
And, unfortunately, there's people out there who, get on the fascia wagon. Everybody's a myofascial expert.
I
There's
know. I
fiends and fascia gurus. And I'm like, well, I mean, even Mark sometimes calls me a fascia guru. And I humbly say, I am just a student. I,
yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I am a messenger, and I am constantly in a state of reading research papers, learning, and staying at the forefront. And so I'll be at the Fascia Research Congress in August in New Orleans, presenting a pre-con for MELT, and also some in the body of the conference, to try to build awareness and bring clinicians and researchers together to improve discovery and potentially create new research
I love
for the
that.
coming years.
Well, but you have literally done more than just study because you have developed the melt method. And your book is incredible. It's a New York Times bestselling book and it's in about a billion different languages.
Just
And what?
9.
Okay, 9 a billion, whatever, same. Uh, and you tell the story about how you were actually helping to heal people of some of their pain by focusing on fascia with your own hands.
Yes.
And you're such an intuitive person and could really tap into that. But what
Mhm.
you wanted to do, because you knew, and I just love this about you in that you can only help so many people one on one. But you were
Yeah.
like determined for them to be able to find ways to help themselves when you weren't with them, but to be able to the world to be able to see this and figure this out. So talk about the melt method and how it really does help people to tap into fascia
Yeah.
and and actually help chronic pain.
Yeah. So, again, if I go back to myself, again, I was in this chronic pain. I was crawling to the bathroom. I'm 28 years old, thinking, this is the end of my career. My fitness career is over. I can't stand on my feet anymore. I'm in so much pain. And when I started learning about plantar fasciitis,
Mhm.
inflamed fascia,
Itis.
itis, and I started learning and reading the research papers and then trying to figure out how to address that. Like, how do you take this science and put it into action? And so I went to learn cranial sacral therapy, visceral manipulation, lymph drainage. I was taking all these courses trying to figure out which one actually addressed fascia. And it turns out that they all mention it, but none of them were directive. And when I did start learning this light touch therapeutic intervention, and you're right, I just have this ability to put my hands on people and feel frequency. It's kind of a superpower. I don't know. This is something I've always hugged trees when I was a kid because they had vibration. It's just a thing for me.
You're
And
literally the tree hugger.
yeah, I'm the tree hugger. Yeah. And so I would, as I started to learn these techniques and I was applying it to my clients, a client of mine had chronic TMJ, jaw pain, headaches, and back pain. And I would treat her and she could go 5 or 6 days without a migraine when she was a daily migraine person, taking
What
many,
would
many.
you do when you said you would treat her? What kind of things were you doing?
I would put my hands on her and I would find regions where her fascial fluids were not moving cohesively. And I would cause tension very gently to that tissue and wait, and then let it go and see if it would
Mhm.
create a fluid induction. And
And don't you
then I
call
would
that
just,
stuck stress?
I call it stuck stress. Yeah,
Yeah.
like regions where the fluids weren't moving. And so my client would call me after 5 days and be like, okay, it's kind of a miracle. I haven't had jaw pain. I slept great, but today I have a migraine again. Can I come in? And I said, it's got to be something in your environment that's doing this. And her exact words to me that day were, well, Sue, if you could just invent a way for me to do to myself what you do with your magic hands, I'd stay out of your office once and for all. I thought to myself, well, I would be unemployed if I could do that. But I wonder if you could do that. Could you simulate light touch therapy and induce the same change? So I started messing around with balls and rocks and rollers, and I came up with the idea of taking PVC piping. I wrapped it in bubble wrap. I wrapped it in a yoga blanket and a yoga mat, and I duct taped the thing together so it had a soft, gentle touch, just like my hands. And I
Yeah.
started to do some of the techniques that I was doing to her. And I did it one day. I knew it. I decompressed my own neck, and I thought, God, I think I did that. So I gave this to Donna, and she went 5 days to 10 days to 15 days to being able to go a whole month with no migraines. And then she said to me, can't you invent a way for my husband to stop complaining about his low back pain? And I was like, let me get to work. So it was like
Thanks for the
my office
question.
just yeah, it became an incubation place where I started to develop techniques. And I actually developed the melt method backwards. I started with the release and decompression techniques, and then it was the rehydrate and the rebalance and the reconnect. So we called it the 4 R's of melt. And what we basically do is we use soft tools like this softball. This
Mhm.
one little thing in learning how to treat your hands and feet is mind blowing to people, that just melting your hands and feet can eliminate back pain, help you sleep better, get you moving better. It's, and I say to them, well, it's because your nervous system and your fascial system are like a power couple. And if you know how to tap into these systems directly, you can really transform so much in your body with just a 10-minute treatment. So melt essentially simulates my hands-on therapeutic techniques that I've learned over the many years. And I teach people how to assess their bodies for what you said,
Mhm.
stuck stress, identify some of the common imbalances that many people possess that are left unaddressed from day to day and cause so much of the neurological distress in the body. I teach them how to down-regulate the stress response, boost the body's natural repair, get their parasympathetic or rest and repair system back up online, rehydrate fascia through tension and compression techniques, and then decompress the primary spaces of their hands, their feet, their neck, their back, and reassess and notice if they make a change. And that's what any good therapist does. We assess, we treat, we reassess. And if we've made changes, then that's the beauty of the human body, is we've reawakened the body's natural healing properties, which for many of us is kind of like stagnant water instead of a flowing ocean within the
Yes.
body, right? And
Yeah.
so if you think of even connective tissue kind of like a sponge, daily living is drying out our sponge, right? And just like a moist sponge, when you compress or pull on it, it moves, it adapts. And then when you take the tension away, it goes back to its ideal shape. A sponge that's dehydrated, you bend and compress it, it doesn't move or adapt efficiently. It doesn't return to its ideal shape, and it doesn't absorb water
No,
as
you could run
efficiently as
water over a dry
this one.
sponge in a
That's it.
second
It just
second.
runs right off, right? And that's
Yes.
why people say, well, if I drink water, all I do is pee more. And I'm like, well, there you go. You have an absorption problem. And get this, where does fluid absorb through the body? Ding, ding, ding. It transports itself through the extracellular matrix and into the inter and intracellular spaces. Then you get it excreted through your lymphatic system. So think of fascia as being the system that allows energy to move efficiently through the body. And when the fluids aren't moving, again, very much like stagnant water, things get mucky. And when the body's a muck, you don't move or feel good, and you start getting symptoms that seem completely unrelated to how you feel when you move. You suddenly have digestive problems,
Yep.
hormonal fluctuations, metabolic problems. You feel exhausted in the middle of the day, but at night when you try to wind down, you can't, and then you're not sleeping through the night. These are all of the changes that happen to us metabolically, hormonally. Fascia has a relationship to all of these processes. So, before you start taking hormone replacement therapy, before you change your diet, before you decide to go vegan or keto
Hmm.
or whatever it else is people are doing today, how about addressing the system that stabilizes your entire body and get that thing back up online? Because if that thing's back up online, all of your other systems work better.
Right. Because to your point, you were doing all the things.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so many of my clients, right, they're doing all the things and there's still this missing piece. And you have that puzzle to it. The dry sponge thing is really huge. I remember saying to my dad, because he was like, I can't drink water because they just pee it out right away. And I'm like, Dad. And so I took out your book and I read that part of the book to him. And it just made so much sense because when you have that, like, that sponge, you actually have to not just run water over it, but you have to actually squeeze it in order
That's
for it to
pumping.
absorb. And that's what
That's
you're
right.
doing in the melt method. But when we look at some of the tools like the balls and the roller, a
Mhm.
lot of people don't realize that what you've developed here is very, very specific
Yes.
because that roller that's in your gym is not the roller.
That's right. Ours is very soft. It's actually made of an EVA and rubber material. So it's synthetic rubbers. So there's no latex in it. There's no toxic chemicals, no phthalates in them, which is really important. If you're going to be putting stuff on your body, you're going to be rolling on it.
Yeah.
The skin has absorbability to those kind of toxins. So I
Yeah.
was very mindful with anything that we were making. We're using TPE material. We're using EVAs. We're using things that don't have latex in them, don't have toxic chemicals in them. And my come from is that you don't need to smash your fascia or blast your fascia or crush or crimp or torture yourself or hurt yourself to get out of pain. In fact, soft tissue likes a soft touch. And as the first route of restoring balance, why don't we just be kind to the body, be quiet, and give yourself permission to go into your body to sense what you feel? Because if you want to get out of pain, you've got to go in your body to get out of pain. And if
Mhm.
you're using hard tools and hard objects as your first route, if you cause pain in your body or you tense up as you're causing pressure, you're doing the opposite. You're
Mhm.
increasing the stress response and decreasing your body's natural repair. If you chill out and you work your way back into a parasympathetic state, you do something that feels good. Now your body can upregulate the healing and
Yes.
repairing, and it just decreases the natural accumulative tension and stress in the body. I mean, it makes sense, but there are many people out there telling you to bruise yourself, to
Right.
torture yourself, to beat yourself up, that it has to be hard. And I think to myself, well, we could go in with a more loving place, a
Yeah.
state of being before we torture ourselves. I think that if we went in, it's the same thing as weight loss. People want to lose weight because they don't like the way that they look or feel. But I always say, why don't we exercise and try to lose weight so that we take all of the love and the beauty that we know that we are and we enhance that, that we build up the good stuff and the junk just kind of rolls away.
Yes.
That's why we do it, is because we love ourselves, not because we hate ourselves. That's why we should be caring for ourselves, is because we love ourselves.
Amen. That is speaking my love language right there.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, one of the things I love about the melt method is the assessment. So it's sort of like you have data to show that it's working literally immediately, which is so different from everything else out there, right? You take supplements, you eat a certain way, and it takes a very long time before you start to see the
Yeah.
results. But what's crazy about it is that while you're doing it, you feel like, am I doing anything? Like this isn't doing anything, because we're so used to, having to kill it in the gym, or to your point, those rollers, when I see those people rolling on those rollers and they're like, "Ugh,"
Oh, yeah.
and I think that's what we believe we have to do in order to make progress, restrict and deprive, kind of torture ourselves a little bit. And so when you're doing the different techniques from the melt method, it's like, it's such, I think going to the gym and all of that is self-care, but this is a different kind of self-care. It doesn't hurt. And sometimes you just feel like, what am I doing? But because
Yes.
you assess at the end, you're
Yes.
like,
Oh,
oh,
yeah.
oh
I do feel
my
like,
gosh.
yeah. I think that's the miracle. And that's really kind of the hook of melt, is that people melt once and then they want to melt every day, because it is the one thing that you can very quickly change, is how the nervous system reacts and adapts to the body. So if you know how to stimulate the system that stabilizes our form,
Yes.
then you can actually transform your body in 10 minutes. So sometimes I do my, like on a rest assess, which is one of the things Carrie's talking about, where you just lie on the floor. And if I'll give everybody an example, if you lie on your back and you lie down and you feel most of your upper back weight is way up on your shoulder blades, and you have this huge arch in your mid back, I'm telling you, you have stuck stress living in the neurocore, which is the system that stabilizes your spine. I'm using melt language here, but
Yep.
in
Yep.
essence, your spine is under too much tension, and it's going to throw off pelvic connection, and that's going to decrease gait patterns. It's going to lose your balance. You're not going to have a good state of connection. But if you then stand up and melt your feet, you lie back down, and just melting your feet, you might feel that that huge cavernous arch almost entirely disappears. And people are like, that's crazy. And I say, it's
Yes.
not crazy. It's how the body works. If
Works.
you induce a fluid flow exchange in fascia, it alters sensory perception, it alters sensory motor control, it adapts through your lymphatic system, and it calms the nervous system down. And that is what you want if you want to live and age well, is a fast, simple, effective way to get your body back on track, back into balance. And that's what Melt's all about.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have my balls with me. I have the little travel bag. It's actually in my kitchen right now, because while I'm pouring like my morning hot drink, I'm just melting my feet, and
Yeah.
then I melt my hands. And it's amazing. When we say melt, it's like this, it's the balls, and it's just like this whole little protocol.
Yeah,
Um,
habit stacking too. If like
yes.
whatever your habit is in the morning, if you make coffee, drop the ball on the ground. It takes my coffee maker about 2.5 minutes
Yep.
to brew my coffee. And so I just melt my feet
Yep.
before I drink my coffee. I get things moving, I drink a bunch of water, and then I go off on my day, have my coffee, answer emails, blah, blah, blah.
Exactly, exactly. And the thing is, to me, this is something that just becomes a practice, because even you
Yes.
who developed this, you still have to melt on a regular
Practice.
basis,
You're saying the
because
word
we're not
practice.
done. Just we can't fix it with, well, I mean, I shouldn't say that. It's not like a permanent fix. It's just like it's health. It's an ongoing, never-ending journey. And
Yes.
we have
Life
to,
is adaptable. We are, anytime you look at your life and you're like, everything is perfect. I'm like, get ready for the crap to
yes.
happen, right? Because life is impermanent. Um, Joy is something that we have to maintain, right? So we want to preserve our joy,
Yep.
but self-care is a daily practice. And I always ask everybody, where are you in your self-practice? And I really want everybody to hear this. When I say self-practice, I mean self-talk, self-love, self-acceptance, self-judgment, self-clarity, self-anything, self-fill in the blank. Um, where are you in that? Are you bad mouthing yourself? Do you look at yourself in the mirror and go, I look like crap today? Do
Mhm.
you walk around saying, I want to have a good relationship, but actually you sabotage everything in your life, right? So
Mhm.
where really are you in loving oneself? Know thyself, love thyself, trust thyself. Where are you in that story? And a lot of people, when I say it, I say, what are you really wanting in life? And their answer is, I'm not sure. And
Mhm.
I say, is it okay that you're not sure? And they're like, well, no, I should know. And I said, are you sure? Because sometimes just acknowledging that you have uncertainty about life is a great place to begin inquiring and exploring how to become more assured of your living experience. Because, when we have certainty over things, we're more apt to do things. If I put a bridge over a cavern or I put a 2x4, which one would you walk over?
Right.
I'd walk over the bridge, but
Right.
why? Is because I actually have certainty that I'll get to the other side. So it's certainty that gets us to react. If we're uncertain, we tend to freeze a bit, and a lot of us are living in a stress state where we're in flight, fight, freeze, or
Freeze.
please
Yeah.
all
Mhm.
the time, and we just are not at a place where we just are. And I think that what Melt really encourages people to do, again, is to give yourself permission to go in your body and to be an investigator, to be an observer in the process of observation of your body, of your mind. Some of the techniques like the rebalance sequence is a 10-minute treatment where all we're doing is breathing, inhaling, thinking about 9 breaths in 3 directions. And what I say to people is notice if your mind has already wandered to like, did I turn the toaster off? Or I can't believe that guy cut me off before I got ready.
Mhm.
You can't shut your brain off. The voices in your mind are not even you. If you can be the observer of the thoughts in your mind, you win. You win the
Yes.
prize of being present. And
Mhm.
what Melt does is it brings people into the present moment to actually utilize their mind to heal their own bodies and to feel better right now. And I think it's one of the very few that really brings people into the present moment. And we really stick with that.
You're really honing into the body mind connection. And I joke that everything I teach is BS, right? Blood sugar, behavioral science, and belief systems. And the belief system and your own awareness, if self-awareness is health truly, then the things that we're doing physically for our body have to increase self-awareness as well. And that's why I'm so passionate and obsessed with what you teach, because you really truly bring both of those together. You
Yes.
know, like people would say to me, Carrie, just give me a meal plan. And I'm like, I will never just do that, because it is
Yeah.
not about just the food. It's about your whole person. And Melt encourages that. Okay, one last question for you before I want to be able to share with people how they can actually start melting is, you talked about plantar fasciitis. You talked about chronic pain. I come to you a lot and I'll be like, I have a client who has fibromyalgia. I have a client who has this. And so what are the types of issues that people have that really benefit from the melt method?
Oh, I mean, any type of joint pain, sleep issues, if you are dealing with a systemic disorder, cancer, lupus, Parkinson's, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, or you're just wanting to back yourself up in the aging process, really anyone can benefit from melt. If you're an athlete, if you're a young adult, I actually think the earlier we understand fascia as a leading player in how we improve sports performance and
Mm-hmm.
movement overall, I think that we will have better athletes with less injuries. So really, I think the nice thing about the Melt Method book is in the back of the book, I talk about circumstances and how to use what we define as the indirect before direct approach of melt. So
Love that.
if
Yeah.
you had neck pain, the last thing you're going to do is the neck release sequence. I would tell you if you have severe neck pain, you want to start with a hand treatment, rebalance, maybe upper body rehydrate, and then the neck release sequence. And that's called melt mapping. And so what you learn in the Melt Method book is how to map out a plan to figure out which sequences are going to be the best for you in what order. And then once you start feeling better, we talk about flipping the map, is doing the same sequences just in a different order and see if you still yield the same change. And if you yield a better change, well, we move you into this direction. If you have less change, well, now we know where the fundamental sequence is. Like this is your map. And then we're going to start adding things into a fundamental map that works for you. And we've got thousands of instructors worldwide. Anybody can find our instructors at meltmethod.com because some of us need a helping hand. I mean, I
Mhm.
teach a live class every single week on Melt on Demand. We have a 15-minute pre-class chat, which is fantastic. I always lay down some sort of idea to everybody. And then we break down moves or techniques. And then we have a post-class chat where people can ask me questions. And so I'm always giving more information for a very low cost for people to come in and learn. And again, our instructors are phenomenal human beings who every time I look at what they're doing with their clients, their group classes, it's really commendable. I mean, these guys are out there really transforming lives using Melt in their practice. And, I
Yeah.
feel like my
I
job
mean,
is done.
there are so many tools. So the Melt Method book is one that everybody has to have on their library shelves. It's like my reference book. Well, I'll go and look at it. But then when you have the Melt on Demand, which is an app, you have it on we put it up on our big screen, and Sue actually, or Hallie, who does Melt Pilates, will walk you through how to use it. But then you are so accessible, and following you on Instagram, Melt Method or Sue Hitzman, but I think you go live on Melt Method. Am I right?
I usually do lives on Melt Method that relate to Melt and
Yep.
self-care.
Yep.
If you follow me on Sue Hitzman, I'm usually talking about the corruption of healthcare and
Yes.
my mom, or about something that I've found or discovered that I find valuable. And of course, you had mentioned my podcast,
Yep.
Anatomical Gangster. I also post Anatomical Gangster over there too.
Yeah, I love that. We'll make sure we link all of that. And by kind of seeing Sue in all these ways, it's a hard concept to sometimes wrap your head around. And the best thing about it is that Sue is always like, literally, you need 10 minutes, don't overthink it.
Yeah.
And then you can just layer your learning on with all the different nuggets that Sue has for you to drop. And the tools that you can get at Melt Method are the balls, the rollers. There's a bunch of different tools. You can start small, you can go with the whole thing, but this has to be a part of your life. And the reason why I wanted to see your answer, Sue, with like, who does this benefit? Because there hasn't been a human yet that I haven't said, like, you have to
Don't
look at
do that.
this. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
you
I
have
mean,
to
really,
look at this.
everybody has fascia. Everybody has fascia, and daily living
Hmm.
causes the dysfunction in fascia. Your repetitive postures, habits, and movements, your relationships, how you move about in the world. Even if you feel like you are the oddball out and your life is perfect, you should be melting also.
Preventative, proactive,
Yeah.
reactive, it's all of the things. And so, I mean, when wherever I am, whether it's a gym, when I travel, or it's my sports massage therapist, my sports massage therapist was talking to me all about fascia, and I'm like, hang on a second. And so
Yeah.
I was like, do you know Sue? So he's now obsessed with you, by the way.
I love it. Tell
So,
him to come to the Fascia Research Congress in New Orleans in August.
and if he's from New Orleans, isn't that so
Oh,
funny?
tell him to
I
come
will
on.
have to tell him that.
Anybody who's curious about fascia and you want to really kind of take a deep dive and listen to science and experience clinicians who are in the trenches of this, I highly recommend that you come.
I love that. Love that.
Yeah,
Love that. Well, Sue, thank you so much. Every time I talk to you, I learn more. I appreciate you're so giving of your time,
of
not just
course.
to me, but to the entire community of people who follow you. And so make sure you are one of them because, you know, you will not regret being able to have a little piece of the Sue Hitzman brain. You're the
Thank you.
best, Sue. Thank you so much. We'll make sure we put all of your info here. Talk
Thank you.
soon.